Hello, Pete Netzel here. I want to do today a video on a book that got me interested in the hobby of metal detecting and eventually led to doing our own books such as The Lost Treasures of Montana and The Lost Treasures of Wyoming. This book was originally discovered in a La Crosse Public Library. It's by Thomas P. Terry, and it's one of his first In Search of Treasure. The first story in this book is on the Eddyville, Iowa treasure. Supposedly in 1878, three miners from the Black Hills were returning to the States, and outside of Eddyville they camped, and that night they each buried their gold in a stone crock. So they buried three separate caches, and during the night they were murdered. And so there was always this legend of this gold buried outside of Eddyville near the cemetery in this wood grove. And so I've seen this question on this famous lost treasure posted on metal detecting forums and such. And eventually when Thomas Terry gave me his 10-volume United States Treasure Atlas, he also gave me some of his old newspaper files that he still had left. And one of the articles was on some road construction in that region that unearthed a blackened skull, which supposedly lent more credence to the story of the murdered miners and the missing gold. So I believe at that time the skull was determined to be a Native American, but it could have been a white person, a miner. We're not sure. But ironically, the story is the first story in his In Search of Treasure, Volume 1, The Search for Treasure. And he tells about him and his partner. They were going to go on a big treasure hunt to New Mexico, but because of the bad weather, they couldn't fly out. They had to drive for so far. And so they decided to stop at Eddyville. And they knew the directions to where this grove was. There was a road, and it turned off this little highway, and it took a T intersection, and it was just past the cemetery apparently. And so they followed the road, and there was the cemetery. Everything fit the story of where this gold was supposed to be buried. And so they were sitting there, or still moving around slow. They were going to turn around, and another car came by. So they kept on driving. Then they doubled back, parked, got out of the car, and it's nighttime and it's raining. And they get out their metal detectors. They had to cross over a barbed wire fence. And in the dark, carrying a shovel each and a metal detector. Now these are the old BFO units. They're not anything modern. This was back in the 70s, early 70s. And so they're fumbling around trying to get signals, and something's moving around in the woods, and apparently it's either a cow or a bull. So they quick got back to the car, getting over the fence, and I think Mr. Terry ripped his pants, or one of the two, Mr. Collins or Mr. Terry, put a tear on their pants off the barbed wire. But I thought kind of humorous as I read it. His stories were always like you were there with him, and so you followed along, and it was like being there. But I always wondered, did they have permission to be in there? It's kind of a interesting story, but it does pertain to the Eddyville gold that I've seen people question about once in a while on the internet. So it's a unique story. It's interesting that even Mr. Thomas Terry went hunting for the gold at Eddyville. Until next time, have a good day.